Good afternoon, everybody. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Alice Mannion and I'm the Tourism and Heritage Officer here at Community Rail Network. My role includes managing the Scenic Rail Britain website and coordinating the annual Community Rail in the City event. However, the biggest chunk of my time is spent supporting and giving advice to community rail groups such as yourselves across the country around their tourism and heritage plans. So as Hazel mentioned, we've got a great lineup for today's website session, looking at the ways community rail can help reboot local visit economies while promoting more sustainable and community-minded forms of travel. There's also a chance for you to share ideas and examples on overcoming challenges during our Q&A sessions. And you'll be glad to hear it's not just me talking this afternoon. So we're really lucky to be joined by two panellists that have a wealth of tourism experience outside of the railway sector. Jo Quinney, Director of Q Marketing and PR, will be sharing with us how she's working with Community Rail in Wales, and Catherine Croney, the Community Rail Officer at High Peak and Hope Valley Community Rail Partnership, is also with us today, bringing her knowledge and experience from previous roles working with larger tourism organisations. So on the next slide, I've listed the main discussion points I'm going to cover over the next 15 minutes or so. So I'm not going to read all those because you can see them on your screen now. So instead, let's just get started. So sustainability and over-tourism were hot topics before the coronavirus pandemic, and then tourism just stopped. Now, as we begin to restart our activities, we look at the opportunities to build and strengthen. It's a chance to reflect on all our activities in the past and use this time to reset the dial, especially when looking at the environmental impact that tourism can have. As people start to venture out and get exploring again, we have a chance to influence how people travel for leisure. We can use the increased interest in staycations to promote sustainable travel by rail and using integrated public transport options to reach places and attractions further beyond railway stations. However, I'm not brushing over the fact that the nation has been told for a number of months not to travel by public transport. And to add to this, we've had the complexity of local lockdowns, where certain places have seen the return of the essential travel-only message, and stricter measures being introduced nationally only last week. So just to give you an idea of where we're at right now with regards promoting leisure travel by rail. So although the UK government advice on using public transport hasn't changed, as of last week, the Rail Delivery Group's marketing plans have been put on hold, and they've moved to a message that you can travel safely and with confidence for those who need to travel, but they're not actively encouraging people to travel for leisure right now. So as a result, we've decided to change our message on Scenic Rail Britain, social media, to one where we're highlighting the amazing lines and the scenery rather than encouraging people to travel for leisure. So this is an ever-changing picture and it will of course be monitored, but this is just an example of how you can still use this uncertain time to engage with visitors and highlight your line. So what I would say is to be prepared, have a contingency plan for future activities, and have the flexibility to take those activities in a different direction if needed. So I'm going to talk in more detail about what we can do to reboot tourism promotion shortly, but first let's take a look at the bigger picture of tourism. The World Tourism Organization are putting their definition of sustainable tourism into practice on a larger scale by leading on the One Planet vision that aims for tourism sector to emerge stronger and more sustainable from the COVID-19 crisis. This vision calls for sustainability to no longer be a niche part of tourism, but to be the new norm, to help underpin tourism's resilience to be better prepared for the future. Now, this is very much a bigger picture, but it hopefully gives you a sense of the worldwide agenda in sustainable tourism and something that tourism businesses and attractions local to you may be working towards. So I'd recommend reading more about the One Planet vision using the link that's on your screens. And just a reminder that the slides will be available after the webinar, so you don't have to scribble that link down. So as the pandemic unfolded, understandably, the conversation around sustainability was on the back burner. Adjustments that have been made to limit the spread of COVID-19 has resulted in an increase in single-use plastic, and face masks and gloves that can't be recycled, bringing yet another challenge for the environment. However, for some, the pandemic has created greater self-awareness around sustainability, with a survey conducted by Foresight Factory for Visit Britain showing that 71% of consumers in the UK are still consciously trying to minimise their use of plastic to help the environment. Also, as the economy recovers, greater awareness is on supporting local, independent businesses, including taking short breaks and holidays within Britain, something that's evident with recent marketing campaigns from Visit Britain. Green Tourism is a membership body promoting greener ways for businesses and organisations to operate. Their website has some really useful info around how organisations can continue to be sustainable post-lockdown. They've got some great suggestions around PPE, cleaning products, as well as how to promote what you're doing to keep visitors safe. The guidance is free to read and you don't have to be a member either. So as we're talking about short breaks and holidays, let's take a look at people's attitudes towards travelling for leisure after lockdown. So I've just picked out a couple of research highlights from Visit Britain's COVID-19 Consumer Sentiment Tracking Survey. This survey is being carried out in regular waves since mid-May and pays a particular focus around the barriers and concerns around travelling for leisure. So the full reports are available on Visit Britain's website, and it's worth checking back to see how trends and attitudes towards travel change over time. So starting at the top here, this shows how comfortable visitors are doing certain activities. It makes sense that the majority of people consider going for a walk and being outdoors as a safe and comfortable activity. And this has been a pretty consistent trend throughout lockdown. Looking at the other end of this chart, travelling by public transport has remained at the bottom end of the scale, but confidence has slightly increased over time. So just to put the weeks into context, week 4 is early June and week 12 is early August. And the research at the bottom here provides an indication to what types of places or activities people are more or less likely to visit as restrictions are lifted. So we can use this interesting information to guide our promotions. Knowing that people are confident in visiting outdoor locations right now, we can highlight how they can use the train to get to these types of destinations. We can then move to promoting indoor venues as confidence in those areas increases with time. If we can reach people in the planning stages of their holiday, we have a better chance to influence visitor travel choices to be more sustainable. With that in mind, we're now going to move on to talk about practical ways that we can do this. Now, I know some of you will be in different positions. You may be looking to increase your tourism activities, or this may be the first time that you've considered what your tourism offer is and how it can be promoted. So whatever stage you're at, you'll hopefully find the following advice useful and food for thought for the future. So as I've already mentioned this afternoon, spending time looking at research could really help you to focus your efforts on tourism promotions. So going back to Visit Britain, they have an impressive domestic and international research hub, and it's really easy to access with no login needed, and it's all free to download. They have in-depth research around visitor habits for the whole of Britain, but they also break it down into specific regions as well. And it's also worth noting they've got some really useful information on how tourism businesses can become more sustainable and how to promote this to customers. Although this is aimed more for hospitality and accommodation providers, it's worth reading if you have station buildings that are open to the public that you could promote as being green. Now, if you're looking for more specific rail and passenger research, you'll find Transport Focus to be a great source of information. We've mentioned some of their research before in our Commuter Rail news bulletin, but they've also produced some interesting reports, such as how younger and older people use the train and how the rail experience could be improved to encourage more of these types of passengers. So there's a lot of information to look at on both of these websites, but they may offer up some interesting insights and could highlight a new audience that you haven't reached out to yet, or it could inspire you for a future project. So there's plenty of research already out there, so why not use it to influence, focus, and drive your future activities? So we all know the value and importance of a good working partnership. Working closely with attractions, tourism businesses, and national landscapes such as national parks and AOMBs can be incredibly beneficial to both your community rail group and to the partner you're working with, something I'm sure both Jo and Catherine, our panellists, will agree with. As many tourism attractions and businesses begin to reopen, now is a good time to speak to these organisations and start building your relationships. Go to them with your ideas and suggestions of how you could work together to achieve mutual goals. Suggestions could include developing transport information on tourism websites and promotional materials, giving priority to sustainable travel options. You could offer to work together to improve pole walking and cycling routes for safer access from railway stations. Consider delivering a joint on campaign to influence visitors taking a green day out or short break. In the future, you could involve partners in activities at physical events, such as commuter rail in the city, for a bigger impact and wider audience reach. Work together to create an area at one of your stations to feature as a tourism information hub. So this could be as simple as providing a display to promote local attractions and how visitors can access them. But ask your partner as well if they could have a similar display in one of their public spaces to highlight how easy it is to access the railway. And I'm not just talking about approaching tourism attractions. So think about ways you could use your existing partnerships outside of tourism. So for example, could you work together with a local school maybe to highlight sustainability messages and encourage leisure journeys? Is there a local bus company that you could work with to help cover the final mile? Or is there a local bike hire company you could work with to offer visitors an additional option of sustainable travel from the railway stations? Now, there's lots more to talk about when it comes to partnerships, too much to cover today. However, we've got a handy guidance document that goes into more detail that can be downloaded from our Community Rail Network website. But before we move on, there's just one really useful partnership I wanted to talk about in a little bit more detail. And that's a partnership with your train operating company. So they've got valuable information about the rail network near you that can help focus your promotions. So just to give you an example of how this could work, we're looking at the partnership between GWR and Devon and Cornwall Rail Partnership. So the map on your screen is an example of a heat map highlighting the hotspots along the GWR network alongside areas where passenger numbers were low. And this was taken around the end of July. So from this, Devon and Cornwall Rail Partnership knew not to focus their promotions around the St Ives line where the highest spike is, but they could give a subtle push to the Barnstable line to help spread visitors around the area. However, this is an ever-changing, complicated picture as some lines are only busy at certain parts of the day and other factors may affect passenger numbers. So it can be really tricky to try and get the balance right and not risk further overcrowding. So I'd suggest the best way is to keep in close contact with your TOC to identify if specific promotions could take place. And there are other ways you can work with your TOC, such as making sure you link through to their coronavirus guidance page from your website and refer to it on your social media. And if your train operating company has a tool when booking tickets that show the quieter trains, highlight that in your promotions as well to help visitors plan their quieter journey. So social media can serve as one of the best ways to stay connected with visitors in a really sustainable way, as you can get your messages across without having to print lots of materials. So think of it as a way for you to interact with your visitors before they travel on your line, a chance to influence them during the planning stages. So I appreciate the majority of you won't have separate social channels just for your tourism audience, but that's okay. You can still attract visitors to interact with your page using your Community Rail Partnership or Station Friends account. So just a few things to think about when looking at using social media for tourism. So include a link back to the visitor area of your website on your posts. And if you don't have a section dedicated to visitors on your own website, you can use your line page on Scenic Rail Britain. Make sure you're following local tourism attractions, tour guides, tourist information accounts, and find your local, regional, and national destination management organisations. So, for example, Visit Leeds, Welcome to Yorkshire, and Visit England, and follow them and start to engage with their page by commenting on and retweeting their posts. Look at what hashtags they use and include the same ones on your posts as well. These accounts often feature photographs from other users, so it's worth engaging with them as you never know, they may even feature your photo. Tag partner accounts in your posts to make sure they get seen. This includes train operators, local attractions, and tourism businesses, all relevant to what you're posting. Increase visitor engagement by highlighting interesting facts about your line or station that people may not already know about. And finally, showcase the best photographs you have of your line and what you can see out of the window, and invite visitors to share their own photos with you. However, if you don't have many scenic photos of your line, why not search on sites such as Instagram or Flickr? So here's one we did recently with Scenic Rail Britain through Instagram. So you can see over here, we asked for permission to use this photo on our Scenic Rail Britain social media accounts. And I've also asked the photographer to reply to the comment as the permission. And then over here, you can see the response, making it quick and easy for the photographer to reply and give his consent. So just make sure you screenshot your conversation as a record of permission, and don't forget you will be expected to provide a photo credit to the photographer when you repost the image. So this is a great way to provide new and interesting content with the only cost being a little bit of your time. So here's some examples of social media posts that have seen some really great interaction with visitors. So over here we have the Cambrian line engaging with visitors during lockdown with a fun quiz about where the photo was taken. At the top here, we've got one from our Scenic Rail Britain Instagram of a charming station along the Cotswolds line. I'm not sure if you can see very clearly, but we've used a few tourism hashtags such as Love Great Britain, Travel Pick, and Visit England. And finally, at the bottom here, we've got one from Devon and Cornwall Rail Partnership with an interesting fact about the Colstock Viaduct that's also received some great interaction with visitors. So if you want to learn more about getting the most out of your social media accounts, you can read the guidance on our website, or you can rewatch our social media webinar with our lovely comms and marketing manager, Nick. And you can find the link to the webinar on our Community Rail website under resources. So with all this in mind, let's just take a final look at some of the key points to consider when rebooting your tourism activities. So today we've talked about spending time researching visitor trends and how these may have changed since lockdown, using tools available on sites such as Visit Britain and Transport Focus. We talked about the importance of reconnecting with your partners to promote tourism and sustainable travel jointly, including working with your train operating company to gain valuable insights into passenger numbers. We've also looked at how you can make the most of social media for tourism promotions. Now, in any of these promotions, you may be tempted to promote hidden gems in order to encourage visitors to explore quieter parts of your line. However, with this, there is a risk that the promotion of these places will lead to an influx of new visitors to an area that may not be set up to handle large numbers of people. So it's just something to be mindful of when highlighting an area as a hidden gem, as it may not stay hidden for long. So
Alice, sorry, your 2-minute time check.
Thank you. So rather than just promoting one place, you could give visitors a number of places to choose from to help spread them out across an area. Extend the area even further by working with nearby community rail partnerships or station groups to deliver a joint promotion. And it's a good idea to engage with the local community to help identify potential bottlenecks in an area, and that way you can promote alternative places to go and help to educate people to think about the impact they're having. So think about how you can make a journey seem as easy as possible. So I find a great way to do this is by using itineraries on your website that can provide accurate times with regards how long you should spend at an attraction before heading somewhere else. This is where you could highlight what people can expect on the train. Do they have to book a seat? Do they need to wear masks? How long does the journey take? Itineraries can be such a good way to get a lot of key information across in a friendly and helpful way, and the bonus of them being based online when things change is that they can be immediately updated. So whatever your tourism activities are over the next few weeks and months, even into next year, always remember with every message you spread and put out there, make sure it will reassure, be helpful and instill confidence in travelling sustainably by rail. And don't forget, Community Rail Network is here to help. So we've got a wealth of resources available to download from our website. Make sure you're signed up to our Community Rail news bulletin that is currently going out weekly. It's the first place to hear about our future webinars and events, and also features on what our members are up to as well. If you've missed any of our live webinars or you love them so much you want to rewatch them again and again, you can catch them on our resources page of our website. And finally, if you want to pick up on anything we've talked about today in more detail or would like more specific advice on topics such as tourism, communications or marketing, please get in touch to arrange a specialist one-to-one session with either myself, Nick, our comms and marketing manager, or Rob, our writer and researcher. So finally, I'll leave you with some useful links for you to revisit after today. So again, these slides will be available on our website after this session. But for now, I'd like to introduce Jo Quinney, who is going to share with us more details about tourism promotions in Wales. And after Jo's presentation, we'll be opening it up for Q&A and some discussion time. So over to you, Jo.
Hi, hello everybody, I'm Jo Quinney. So I'm just going to share my screen, one mo. And I'm just about to share my presentation, I hope. Brilliant. Are we there,
Yeah,
Hazel? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine, Jo.
Good. So who am I? I'm Jo Quinney. I come from the southeast of England originally, but I've been living in North Wales for over 25 years. I do public relations and marketing, and I work in tourism mostly now. So my background's in outdoor adventure, and now I work with steam railways and railways. So sustainable tourism, what am I going to talk about? Well, I'm going to give you an intro to what my tourism background is. I'm going to talk about the main project I work on, which is the Great Little Trains of Wales. And then I'm going to talk about Wales on Rails project. And then I'm going to explain how we set up the project, and then COVID happened and everything changed. So I also want to flag up now that the rules are different in Wales, and from about now, over, well, they say 2/3 of the Welsh population are in a new lockdown situation. So that's all South Wales. And then there's a third, which is most of the landmass of Wales. We're kind of the new COVID normal at the moment. But it's just to bear in mind that things are a little bit indifferent in Wales over here. So, and also we have governmentally, we have different issues that we balance, and our community rail officers working with Transport for Wales and other rail providers are balancing up a number of things. But from the perspective of writing projects, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act in 2015 is all about sustainability, being responsible, being resilient and healthier. And this bears a little bit of relation to how Visit Wales have been funding grants recently, and it bears into our project as well. So who do I work with? I work with Ribride, who are a boat company here in Menai Bridge on Anglesey. We take people out on the water, give them amazing fun times in the marine environment. And I run their social media, marketing and YouTube channels and a whole load of stuff to go and reach, find our customers and get them on boats. I also work with an understanding of a load of outdoor adventure companies, and we sorted out the adventure map, which was a Visit Wales funded project, and an agreement between all those companies to start promoting adventure tourism in Wales to a wider global market, really. So for example, this slide in the bottom left shows our Japanese translation of the website. So that was getting a website and then sending it to different markets all around the globe. And there was an app linked to that. And I know Devon and Cornwall have been done amazing work with their app, and I've seen that project. And there's some traction with apps. If you want to ask me questions about that later, you can. And that we're talking about apps at the moment in a kind of generalist way, I think. So Great Little Trains of Wales, I started with a project with them after this, immediately after this happened. And I've popped this slide in, especially for Alice. you as look. There are lovely, great little trains people at the Rail in the City, Community Rail in the City project in Birmingham New Street in summer 2018. So they took all the little trains, the little narrow gauge steam railways to Birmingham New Street and had an amazing and very productive time. So I got involved in the project. After they'd done that bit of the project, they realised that delivery of the project was proving very difficult. They'd written the bid, done the project, and I was brought on board to help manage Great Little Trains going to Berlin and their new website. So just to explain a little bit about Great Little Trains, it's an understanding of 11 narrow gauge steam railways in Wales. They've been in a marketing group for 50 years, which is really amazing. And they promote each other, support each other, have regular meetings with each other. There's a chair, there's a really fantastic sort of network, and they all work together to promote steam railways. So the project the aim was to give them a new umbrella website to encourage people to use the railways and see how they were all interconnected. There's also outreach with going to ITB Berlin. So that was the other thing that they went off and did. And we were working on a number of little projects to promote. So we've got a discount card. So you can buy one card and then go and get 20% off every railway in Wales with this card. So one adult can get a discount on all the railways. So that's from Brecon Beacons all the way up to Mount Snowdon if you wanted to. We were also doing a co-promotion with travel accommodations. So if someone phones and rings and says, I've got a Great Little Trains discount card, you get discount on a bed and breakfast, for example. So we were talking about the project was great. Visit Wales were very pro it. Everyone was very happy. And we were speaking about doing a second project in spring 2019. So we thought we'd do the application. We popped it in and we thought, what could we do? And we thought, wouldn't it be lovely to get people to the Great Little Trains by using public transport? We thought Great Little Trains of Wales were very well positioned to start talking to the railway network, the bus network, and then tourism providers as well. So we knew we needed to engage with stakeholders, and Great Little Trains would be running the project. And I knew there was a little bit of a thirst really for having a Scenic Wales type brand and websites. So we popped the application in and we were successful. So we then had a task of engaging with stakeholders and what we're going to do. So it's funded, the project is part funded by Visit Wales on a tourism innovation project, a TPIF project with Visit Wales, and funded by the railways themselves. And then we went to talk to stakeholders. We knew we needed some support, and we were hoping some stakeholders would put something in the pot as well. So our aim was to talk to international travellers. They could come in via Holyhead, Birmingham, Manchester, Cardiff, and then they could catch a train, maybe a bus, and get to a steam railway or a tourism attraction. We wanted to organise a PR campaign and demonstrate how easy, like Alice has said, by interesting itineraries and things to do, how easy it was to travel around the region using public transport. The aim is to have a website with video experiences and itineraries to drive that engagement. We had a slightly out of date book now, which had Arriva trains in it, and we wanted to create a new book as well. And we had an idea for an Oyster card, maybe doing a bit of research that looked at how joint ticketing might work. Joint ticketing technically is really difficult. We've looked at it a number of different ways, but we were trying to find good examples and trying to get someone to do a bit of more of an academic research project into how joint ticketing might work. So it was moving through the year, and I thought we knew what we were doing and everything was fine. We got to January and we thought, right, we started working with Transport for Wales, stakeholders really supportive, really on board with us, really looking after us, working well. they put out a survey on our behalf, which was fantastic. So what should we call this new website? We were open to suggestions. So we looked at Wales on Rails, Explore Wales by Train, Scenic Wales, Explore Wales, Great Little Routes of Wales, which fitted with my other brand. That was my choice, but it worked out that Wales on Rails was the most supported. So off we went, pootling on our little way, running the project. We started working with an amazing set of stakeholders. So via our links with Transport for Wales and the Conway Valley Line, Mel at the Conway Valley Line, she was there. She was really a great support. She's now moved to Transport for Wales, which has assisted really. And she was a great conduit to talk to the other community rail officers. And fantastically, they've all come on board. They're now working partners with us. They support us, and we're hoping that the project avoids duplication. That's what we're really hoping, that it's an umbrella site that provides loads of information. It's a fantastic planning tool. So everyone was on board, everything was fine. Then the pandemic happened. So Visit Wales very sensibly called in all the TPIF projects and said, what are you doing? The Welsh Government had a complete ban on doing any promotion of Wales to a global market. And in fact, it had a stop on all marketing promotions, probably something you guys have experienced as well. So we knew that we had to change. So we decided to start the project slightly. So we thought, well, we're experiencing so much in lockdown on our doorstep. Let's focus on journeys from our doorstep, tourism inside Wales, and then potentially build in a bit of future planning for when we can do travel to Wales from the UK and when we can do inbound travel to the UK as well. But we thought we need to maybe turn some of this off and on as well. We need to have that flexibility. With the Great Little Trains, our work has carried on there, and we've decided to, our discount card, which is for international market, used as a tool to raise funds to help all of the members. So you did have a card that was for 12 months, and we've said to people, we'll give you 24 months if you would support us by buying a gold card, which is like prepaying for tickets. The core themes of the projects have remained the same. So we're looking at themed experiences, tourism experience in North, Mid and South Wales that link the Great Little Trains and the railway network and the bus network and coach network with. We're calling it accessible, adaptable accessibility. So anything that's, anyone has any access issues or disabilities, what places might be good for them to visit. Adventure, so it's still linked to what I like doing, which is amazing adventure tourism. Food, we thought that was an important part of any tourism experience. Gardens for outdoors and heritage for outdoor kind of attractions. And then attainable outdoors, we just want to look at what walks can you do from the railway lines? Can you walk between the railway lines? What is there to see? So we're adapting the project quite heavily. We are being very wary about inbound travel. So we're just waiting to see how inbound travel works. We're going to have those parts of the projects on the website ready to switch on when we can say, please fly to Liverpool. You can get into North Wales to have some amazing tourism adventures. We're going to be marketing to start with to a slightly different audience. We need to be talking to local people and encourage them on and onto the railways. So in addition, that also means we've got extra messages to put in and comms to do about railways being COVID safe, about maybe local lockdown rules changing or applying or different behaviours. And
Jo,
yep.
Sorry to interrupt your 2-minute time check.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So nearly there. So my big question is, I'd love to get bloggers out on the railway and Instagrammers, but are we actually going to be able to achieve that in 2021? That's what I'm trying to get my head around. Can we create some virtual itineraries just to get us going now, and hoping we can get some itineraries and some experiences in the bag later? There's big questions about, should we have photos with people with masks on or not? How are we going to future plan for that? So the mask issue is about future proofing. So what are we going to do about that? And then the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act it has been key critical for sustainability to get people out of their cars and using public transport. So we just think we're going to be supported in the future. It's going to be really important for sustainability to get people using public transport. So how is that going to be achieved? A little bit of an insight into what we've been working on graphically. So we've been working on the logos, that's all been going ahead, and the work with the website people is happening at the moment. This is just a little bit of an idea of what the logos may look like and what colour scheme we're going to be using, and what maybe some printed materials might look like. And then just to give you a little bit of chat about who I am. So I'm Jo Quinney, and those are my sort of Twitter and Instagram handles. And the main thrust of Wales on Rails is to encourage safe, sustainable and scenic adventures. Thank you. So I'm passing back to Alice, aren't I now, Alice?
You are. Thanks, Jo. That was
I'll
great.
stop sharing.
Thank you very much. It was lovely to see the photos of Birmingham New Street as well, with the beach.
You didn't see those when we practiced, did you, Alice?
I didn't. That was a nice surprise
for you.
Right, so we're just going to open it up now, just to see if we've got anybody with any questions for either myself or Jo. I'm just looking. I don't think there's anything in the Q&A box. I don't think there's been any questions yet, has there, Hazel?
No, not as yet, but we can invite people to raise the hand perhaps now if they have any questions.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to ask us a live question, just use the raise your hand function and then we can unmute you and you can go ahead and ask your question. So
don't be shy. Yeah, and don't be shy. Crikey. It's not like Community Rail to be quiet.
We've obviously answered all the questions.
Well, it's when you get an outsider along, no one quite feels confident, maybe. But I mean, I think possibly after Catherine spoke, and there may be some joint questions. And what I didn't want to do, Alice, was you've done a great bit about using social media, and it might be that there's some specific questions about using social media from a sort of different perspective people might want to ask later, things about tone of voice and about engagement, if people might want to pick my brains a bit later on.
Yeah, quite. Yes.
Okay. But
so
yeah, we can't see any questions at the moment. Is there absolutely nothing that anyone wants to ask? I don't mean generally about what we're having for tea or anything like that, you know, sort of related questions would be great. But if
Hazel,
hang on, we have one. Yes. Yes, we do. Yeah. So we have Roy Brown. I'll just unmute you, Roy. Okay, Roy. So who do you like? Oh, 1 second. Yeah, who would you like to ask your question of, Roy?
It's really just a general question. It's the problem is that obviously we're all having to deal with different situations. It's really a moving target. So how do we really cope with the fact that we don't know what the advice should be? And the other thing is I've travelled on the train a few times recently because I had to, because my car was broken down. And there's a whole safety issue. I must admit, 90% of people on the train were being very good and trying very hard, but a sizable minority were not wearing masks. I had someone near me who was obviously quite ill, not wearing a mask, pregnant as well. And I think there's a real problem of trying to promote community rail when we don't know how safe it is.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point, and I think that's one thing that we've tried to do with Scenic Rail Britain is more of highlighting the scenic lines that are out there and the scenery and what people can see without necessarily saying go out there and travel for leisure. It's just kind of keeping people aware that you're still there, you're still here, you know, you've still got this amazing line, and it will still be there waiting for you when people feel confident to travel. And as I say, that's what RDG's message is at the minute, and quite a lot of the talks around the country is a message of travelling safely and trying to give that confidence. And I think it's a bit of as well going into the unknown. So obviously people who've not travelled on the train since before lockdown, it is a totally different experience, not to mention having to wear a face mask. So it might just be focusing on those smaller journeys to get people's confidence up. But yeah, it is a tricky one, and I'd have hoped by now that we would have seen the light at the end of the tunnel, but it seems like it's going to be quite uncertain for at least the next few weeks, if not months. So yeah, I think we are looking into next year promotions, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I suppose my project is funded to March 21, and we're looking at making that extendable as well, I think. So that the project was due to finish in December this year, and Visit Wales have said, no, it's definitely to March. And as I say, we're looking to switching bits on and off, and it might just be that it's about saying when train travel becomes safe and everyone's confident in using train travel, this is here. So a lot of it is about influencing and planning, and there's a lot to be said for having a virtual tour of somewhere, so you can go in, and have a think about where you might go, or encouraging people to find new and interesting things on their doorstep. That's why we're sort of doing the local stuff. What can you find from the railway on the doorstep? Is there a walk that maybe goes through a station, so you still got a little bit of that using the station? I know it's really complex, and of course in Wales it's even more complex, and it might not be appropriate for certain sectors of the community to use rails for a while. But what I think is sustainable travel is so important that at some point this will change. At the minute it just feels like we're right in the middle of the mess, doesn't it? It will change. So it's trying to be future proof, and when it comes back, making sure that social media and the websites reflect what the travel messages are, re safety, but also re sustainability as well.
Thank you both. We actually do have some questions queued up now. I believe so. Martin Yallop from Commuter Rail Network has put something in the Q&A saying, question about connectivity and public transport. I'm assuming you want to ask a question, Martin, so I'm going to unmute you and allow you to talk. So are you able to deliver your question, Martin?
Right. Can you hear me, Hazel?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Right. My question is about connectivity, because I did work in tourism many years ago, and this is a question that cropped up a lot. I spent a few days in North Wales last year intending to try some of the great little trains and failed miserably, mainly because the public transport doesn't connect well with the trains at the various locations, particularly Carnarvon, Blaenau, Festiniog, etc. This was partly due to the fact the Conway Valley line was closed.
Yeah, that's not going to help, Martin.
There wasn't much, so I'm not blaming anybody, but I did find frustrating things, such as the last bus back to Llandudno from Blaenau left a few minutes before the train arrived from Portmadoc, which I think that's the sort of thing we need to address. We need to make it easier for people to access trains, and we also need tickets. I'd like to buy a ticket at my local station here in Lincolnshire, direct to one of the destinations on one of those little lines. I wonder how feasible that is.
So joint ticketing and the research, that is part of the project, because we know that that's what people ideally would like. And if you can buy one ticket, that means, because there's a real problem just on my doorstep, which is you can't get to some places because you have to get off the train at Bangor and then get on a bus. So we absolutely know it's a problem. And joint ticketing and then joint timetabling is kind of, the two go hand in hand, don't they, really? So what we want to do is show some real world examples, which might mean having overnight stays in places because the distances between are quite big. But hopefully it'll raise where there might be timetable issues, like you've said, and then maybe some tweaking can be done. And part of the trains are quite well positioned, I would hope, to talk with the stakeholders and maybe have some influence on what they're doing, so we get this bus train thing going on. We know it's a problem in Wales. Visit Wales work on a project with their routes that are driving routes around Wales, and they know there's a massive problem with final mile as well. So final mile problem is that you can't get off the train and you can't get to the destination where you want to without walking or getting a taxi, or there's just nothing there. So what we're hoping to do is that this will kind of bring to the fore where these gaps might be and where these issues might be, and then we can do a little bit of influencing people to get everything to work together a bit better.
Thank you, and thanks for your question, Martin. We have Jo Andrews as well waiting to ask a question, so I'm just going to unmute you, Jo, and you should be able to speak anytime soon, I hope. Sorry, it seems like, oh, there you go, Jo.
Oh, hi there, hi. Hi everybody. Just a question for Alice really. At the beginning of your presentation, you said about the vast majority of people are using the train to go to outdoor spaces. A bit of advice really, I've been really reluctant over the summer due to capacity on the trains, of trying to promote people onto the trains to go to Skegness and to our other big areas, when a lot of them are getting left behind at stations and refuse boarding due to the fact that we've got 2 cars and overcapacity on the trains. What I didn't want was negative social media feedback. Would be trying to promote really good destinations via the train for the people to come back and say yes, as long as you can get a seat. I don't know if you have any advice going forward on that one.
I think again it comes down to working closely with your TOC, and like I know not all TOCs will be doing the heat maps like GWR did, but they've got that in that insider knowledge. And I suppose if you've also noticed that you've got some hotspots in your area, then I suppose it's kind of thinking a little bit about what other areas along your line that you could spread people out to, and I suppose as well it's just being clear with people and saying this can be a busy service, try at a later time. It's just a bit, people will be more confident traveling if they, like you say, you don't want to push them onto that one service that's really busy, but if you can maybe highlight that and say this tends to be busy, perhaps you can go for a shorter journey over lunchtime, or maybe go in the afternoon when it's a little bit quieter. It's just, it's a hard balance to try and get that right, but I definitely speak to the TOC and see if they've got any anything similar to what GWR do, and try and balance it that way really.
Alice, can I just come in here with a comment from Anders that is related to this and some previous stuff. Anders says at Commuter Rail Network we're working with RDG and RSSB, who are producing new materials to try and give people the confidence that trains are pretty safe from COVID-19. Just a comment from Anders, just so people know where we're at with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to? So we've got a couple more minutes. I'll carry on. And anybody, I just want to reassure everyone that anybody we can't come to now, we are going to have another panel Q&A at the end, so I can hold those in the Q&A section until then. But there's a couple more. One from Anne Ridley. So Anne says the Northeast is in lockdown, yet the Western section, Cumbria, is not. Interesting. How can we deal with the split messaging? That's a really good question, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a really good question, and I don't envy her, Anne. And I know Catherine's on, and I know she's kind of the same with. I think she's spread it across 3 different counties over at the Bentham line. But what I'd say again, it's being clear to the visitors that obviously, if they go into the section of the line where you are under lockdown, it's making sure people know that about their journey, so have that information on your website, but it's also then you may want to still highlight things at the other end of the line. And what we did with, obviously, Scenic Rail Britain is a lot bigger scale, but we waited until we had a clear message from England, Scotland and Wales that you know, travelling for leisure, even though they weren't shouting about it, we did get a stage where actually, you know, we could make that slight shift in messaging, and we made sure we didn't promote. We were still basically saying the essential travel only message until we'd got those 3 countries were all in alignment. So that's obviously on a bigger scale, but it's kind of thinking, you know, when, and it's the question, when will like the individual lockdowns come to a close? But if you feel that you can still promote that other end of the line, maybe it's just highlighting, like I say, the scenery, the pictures, not necessarily saying now's the time to travel, but just saying we're still here. When it is safe to travel, you'll be able to do this, you'll be able to do this, kind of like the future inspiration kind of things.
I think there's something to be done, if just to inject, Alice, which is making it clear in your tweet or your Facebook post or your Instagram whether it's future travel, future planning, or whether it's something that's time sensitive, that we might have to start using things that says this message is running from this for this month or this week or at the moment. So I mean, please check guidance is a very quick fallback and maybe a bit too easy. So maybe we need to start best practice of being this part of our line is open, you can go from A to B, and date stamping things very clearly, because that can get lost in a Facebook share or a retweet, that there's something clearly that states where that message maybe has some sort of time coding or qualification that you place on tweets or whatever social media you're using. So I think we might just need to start thinking about a way of working that, or having, you know, that it's future tourism or, you know, future planning or holiday 2022 we're talking about. But let's hope it doesn't get to that stage, and that maybe it is, you know, we just start date stamping things, really.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, both of you. We've just gone slightly over, but some good questions there in the end. There are a couple of things left on the Q&A, so I'll hold those there until after the next section. So I'm going to hand back to you, Alice, now, please, to continue. And thank you ever so much, Jo. We'll bring you back in after the next presentation.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you for your questions there. So as Hazel said, we are going to have another Q&A and discussion session right after the next panellist, which I'm pleased to introduce Catherine Croney, Community Rail Officer for High Peak and Hope Valley Community Rail Partnership. So over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Alice, and hello everybody. I'm just going to go on to screen share. There we are. Okay, so my name, Catherine Croney. I'm the Community Rail Officer with the High Peak and Hope Valley Community Rail Partnership. I am a job share with Andrew Walker, who a lot of you will probably know, and I've been in post since February, so I had a month of being in the office and then into lockdown. So it's been a challenging few months, but fantastic. I'm loving working in the community rail family very much. So what I'm going to do is just a very brief introduction about me and my background, and then I'm going to talk about what we've been doing in our CRP to collaborate and work with others to help support the tourism industry, how we're working especially with the Peak District National Park Authority to help our new visitors, and share a project from my fellow Derbyshire Community Rail Partnership, that's the Derwent Valley Line with Alistair Morley, and just a brief overview of our future plans. So briefly, For over 20 years, I worked as interpretation manager for the Peak District National Park Authority. So my main job was to work with communities, to work with key stakeholders such as National Trust, the water companies, RSPB, to develop messages and interpretation throughout the national park. So as you can see on screen, Peak District National Park, for those of you who don't know, spans right up from Home First down towards Leek and stop across from Sheffield over towards Manchester. And you will see there that the national park receives over 14 million visitors a year. It's obviously surrounded by big cities, so it's very easily accessible. A lot of people do come by car, and this has always been a challenge for the national park to get people onto rail and onto buses to visit the area itself. You'll see there 20 million people live within 1 hour's drive, and over 50 live within 4 hours drive. So it's a very accessible park. It is the first national park in Britain, designated in 1951, and I'll come back to a bit of what the plans are for next year in the 70th anniversary. So just a bit about me. I'm very new to community rail, but I know the area very well. You'll see we have 3 lines: the Buxton line that goes into Manchester, the Glossop line that goes into Manchester, and we have the Hope Valley line, which spans Sheffield through to Manchester, bisecting the Hope Valley in the Peak District National Park. So that's just a bit of context of our area. So what have we been doing? Until the pandemic, we have been working with the National Park Authority on what's called the Hope Valley Explorer. Now, this is a bus that connects with our stations in the Hope Valley, Bamford, Hope and Edale. And it's a bus that takes people around the area to those places such as Castleton and Upper Derwent Valley, where there is no train access. But what we're trying to do is coordinate this hop-on, hop-off scenic bus ride from the stations all around the Hope Valley. There is an audio commentary on board, and at present it is summer only. Obviously this year we've had to postpone this, but we are going to be working with the National Park Authority to develop this further for next year. I was asked to talk about working in partnership. Again, we've been working with local authorities to help regenerate and boost tourism in areas. We've been working very closely with High Peak Borough Council. They received a big pot of money from the government for the Toddbrook Reservoir incident, which happened last year. Many of you will realise that it was the dam that burst its banks and flooded Whaley Bridge tragically. However, High Peak Borough Council have had a big pot of money, as I said, to help boost tourism and support local businesses in the area. And it was actually a former colleague of mine who is the regeneration officer, and she asked me, well, can we do other work throughout the High Peak area, trying to engage with the towns such as New Mills, Whaley Bridge, Chapel on the Frith and Chinley, to help support those towns in their tourism offer. And so I've been working with the officer at High Peak to look at these panels, and not only will these go in at town centres, but we've actually got them at the stations as well to help support the whole of the towns themselves. We've also been working alongside the National Trust. You'll see the welcome panel at Disley. This is about to be installed. Disley is not far from Manchester, and it has the Lime Park, which is the National Trust property, very close by. You can easily walk from Disley Station. So again, we've been working with the Trust and Disley Parish Council to help promote the visitor from the station itself. More locally, we've been working with our station groups, And these are local projects that we want to help promote our towns and encourage people back to the Peak District. You'll see here, this is the Friends of Buxton Station, our ever-present station group who's always busy. And you'll see that on the bottom right, that they've been developing the rail trail. And to help support the shops in Buxton, they've developed the rail retail trail, and that's again in an effort to help support those businesses during the pandemic, to get people back into Buxton, you know, to get them spending and supporting the local economy. An interesting little project we've been working on, not only with Buxton, but also Glossop and Hadfield and various stations in the Hope Valley. We've been working with the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, and they've been helping our volunteers do bumblebee safaris and also Bumblebee ID sessions on Zoom. And here you'll see that we're trying to address, you know, not only just come and see the, you know, the landscape, come to the towns and visit, but also we have a very rare bumblebee in the Peak District called the bilberry bumblebee, and it's only found around the Dart Peak area, so basically the Gritstone areas where our stations are. So again, we're working very closely with our groups, training them to help provide bumblebee safaris when we can. And you'll see here, Buxton have just developed their own self-guided bumblebee safari right from the station. So you can go and pick up a leaflet from there or other outlets, or you can download them as well. So that's some projects that we've actually been working on, but actually there are some real visitor issues in the countryside, and especially around the Peak District. You'll have probably seen lots of people coming to the area. They're very different audiences who typically visit the national park. They really have a lack of knowledge of the area and perhaps an understanding of how to behave in the countryside. They're new visitors, you know, so they probably haven't been here before, and they don't know how to get here. They don't know where to go, and parking has been a real issue. So this is where we've been working with the National Park Authority on trying to support them and getting new messages out to those people who, you know, are first-time visitors. So we've been helping support the New Countryside Code campaign, which you can see here. And we've been putting banners up at our stations in the Hope Valley. It's all about the Peak District proud, you know, for people to come to the area to respect, protect and enjoy it. And trying to stop people from having barbecues and setting the moorlands on fire, because obviously this has devastating effects on the wildlife and the habitats themselves. So, you know, we feel as a community rail partnership, we have a duty to support those organisations in how they manage people and give, you know, good positive information to those people visiting. Again, we've been working with the National Park Rangers. From what they've been saying, people are just arriving at parking, or even if they do come on the train, they just don't know where to go or what to do. The typical visitor to the Peak District, you know, will have a good idea of, you know, knowing where to go. They'll have maps. But from experience, we've been told that people just don't know where to go. So what we've been doing is helping to support the national park with giving people short walks, and you'll see the two slides on the two images on this slide are actually trails that I did about 10 years ago when I was at the national park. They're themed trails, they're not very long, they're very well signposted and written so that they go from the stations. You'll see there's a Grindleford Geology Trail and a Jane Eyre Hathersage Trail. So it's about trying to get people understanding the landscape that they're in, and we're providing the National Park Rangers with those resources. I'll give a shout out to our Derwent Valley line. This is situated in the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site. Obviously the CRP officer is Al Morley, and we have been working, I actually worked with him when I was at the National Park, but what he's been doing is working very closely at stations, trying to provide information, interpretation about the natural and cultural heritage along the line. It's a very scenic rail journey, and he's been working very closely with attractions as well to support people, you know, coming along from Nottingham and Derby up towards Matlock. And this again, he's been working very closely with the World Heritage Site. You'll see here, there's some, he's been at Nottingham, at Community Rail in the city, promoting Perry and the Peregrine with his activity book for children. There are various station-to-station leaflets. So really, it's a whole suite of information and interpretive activity that Al's been working on. And I know plans are for the activity book to be extended down towards the Nottingham part of his line. And you'll see there was a panel that's at Derby Station. I work very closely with Alistair and with other organisations to try and get people on the train, back up into Matlock, and then out into the National Park. So again, it's about providing that sort of information to access areas through train travel. So our plans for the future for the High Peak and Hope Valley Commuter Rail Partnership, and all, obviously this is COVID permitting. We've identified key events that we feel that our CRP can align with. So for example, we've got one next year, which is the 70th anniversary of the Peak District National Park I mentioned earlier. And they are planning lots of events, hopefully that those will take place. But of course, we want to be involved with those with the Hope Valley line, primarily because obviously the mass trespass, which will be celebrating 90 years in 2022, all started from those protesters and campaigners from Sheffield and Manchester coming out on the train. And so we want to try and recreate that and try and promote more train travel into the national park from our cities.
Catherine, sorry to interrupt you. Giving you a 2-minute time check.
Thank you very much, nearly there. We want to engage more with our DMO, our destination management organisation, that's Visit Peak District, through better marketing of rail travel to the area. This is something that Andrew and I have got in our activity plan to start doing this autumn, working with Visit Peak District to do that. We want to try and develop a joint marketing project with the YHA. We're very lucky, their headquarters are here in Matlock, and they've got fantastic youth hostels across the Hope Valley line at Castleton, Edale and Hathersage. We want to look at some joint promotion with them, obviously with more of the, you know, the staycation element of what's happening now. That's something that we'll be looking at. And we also want to build on the Hope Valley Explorer bus and tie in with existing cycling initiatives. There are lots of cycle hire businesses in the Hope Valley, and again we want to have a look at if we can do some discounting cycle hire if people are travelling by train, and that's something again we'll be working with the National Park Authority with to look at for next year. And of course we want to continue to support our station groups and communities in developing any tourism projects. I think we're blessed in this in Britain with having so many national parks, you know, World Heritage Sites, you know, AONBs. I think, you know, we have to align ourselves with those partners to provide engaging travel opportunities and promotion with them by train. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. So that was really interesting, actually. It was good to see what you do in the Hope Valley area, and it was nice to see Perry the Peregrine as well. I've missed him. So we're just going to go back to question and answer session and our discussion session. So we've still got some few questions left over from last time. So Andy Buckley has asked which social media platform is best for what message, and should we repeat the same stuff on multiple platforms? So with regards to Scenic Rail Britain, we find that Twitter tends to be more rail sector audience. So obviously we've got all the community rail partnerships on there, their offices, people interested in the sector. Facebook tends to be, certainly with regards to Scenic Rail Britain, it tends to be more of a family audience. And Instagram, we've got the high quality images, and that seems to be more people looking for inspiration, inspiring of places to go. So what I'd say about that is we've just actually started ourselves separating the messages that we put across the channels. So we've put Instagram as being separate, because we used to schedule them all together and not really get as much back with regards visitor engagement through Instagram. But now we've started separating that. You can't have live links in Instagram. And we've started using a lot more hashtags, because it's a lot more characters you're allowed than what you're allowed for Twitter. So in that respect, I think it is better that you separate your message for each, obviously time allowing. But I think as long as you are getting your message across, obviously Facebook as well, you've got more space to actually get your message across because of the characters. Twitter, you can, if you wanted to upload a photograph, you could maybe use that as part of your message to get a little bit more information across. But I think Twitter's more of a highlighting things and forwarding you onto the right website. As I say, that's Scenic Rail Britain's side of things. I don't know whether Catherine or Jo's got any other experience on different audiences for different social media.
Well, sorry, I'll just come in here first of all. We haven't at the moment, because we're just about to launch our own website, and I've just set up our own Facebook page in the past 2 weeks. So for me, from the community rail partnership side of things, we're in our infancy. So I think, Jo, you might have more experience on that, but we are getting quite a following on our Facebook page, which is great.
Oh, good.
And I think that Alice's idea of separating streams and looking at your market is good. I'm using a different example now, because I'm going to use the boats example. So we don't find we get any B2C via our Twitter. So when we put stuff on Twitter about coming on a boat trip, it might get retweeted a bit, but it's amazing for industry stuff. So use Twitter if you want to reach out to journalists, researchers, people that want to gather data for industry. That kind of in-industry stuff seems to work really well on Twitter. But I don't feel there's massive return of investment. It can ROI on like ticket sales essentially in that way. And I think that lots of the train, the bigger train, it's used in a way for instant messaging as well. Please send a direct message and we'll come back to you. And complaints are an issue on Twitter as well, aren't they? So, Twitter is sort of a beast in itself, really. The Facebook is much more family, much more business, direct to consumer. You can tell a longer story, you can have galleries of images, videos, great on Facebook. So that's what we tend to do. So it is about really having a think, and Alice has given some great pointers on looking at research for what your audience is, what you want it to be, and how you want to talk to them. Really, it's complicated, and it takes quite a lot of refining and shaping, and it's not quick. I can't do so. Writing a blog, getting it out there, sharing it, and in a way, that's one of the best practices I think there is to have something on your website that you then send out to through the different channels, so that you've got that core place that it originates from. That can be a useful way to do it as well.
Fabulous, thank you. So Claire Kendall's got a question for us. Are you taking photos with or without masks for tourism purposes at the moment? So this is something that I'm quite careful with, because you know, as soon as you put a picture on there with people on a train with no mask, you know somebody's going to say they're not wearing masks, especially when you put it out on the social media platform. So it's not I mean, to be honest, it's not something that we don't have a wealth of pictures of people on trains. Ours is more landscape pictures, certainly for Scenic Rail Britain anyway. But I think if you do have pictures of people on the trains and you want to use them, just make sure you put a little statement to say picture taken post-COVID. I know I've seen a couple of adverts on the TV recently that they've got that little bit of a statement at the bottom there when they've got big groups of people having a party, that kind of thing. They've said filmed pre-COVID. So yeah, it's just something to be mindful of when you are putting pictures out there. But as I say, if you've got pictures that you want to use, feel free to use them. Just make it clear, even if you don't want to put it in the body of your promotion on social media, you could just make a little note and put a caption on the actual picture itself, just to say this photo taken pre-COVID. So we've got Sherston asking, is Community Rail Network sharing any generic advice to TOCs for sharing immediate and responsive passenger data with CRPs, such as the heat maps from my earlier presentation? And thanks to Anders, who's answered that question and provided a very helpful link in our Q&A box. So we've got a post on our website, on the Community Rail Network website, that links to each TOCs data on quiet, busy services, and that link for that is in the question and answer box. So thank you, Anders, for that. And then we've got Anne Ridley. So she's mentioned about feedback from the National Park authorities indicating a 40% increase on 2019 in number of cars paying for parking at the Hadrian's Wall sites. She says, we will all have a challenge to get people out of their cars. How can we work together to do that? So I'll just jump in there first before I pass it over to Catherine. But we have actually got a National Landscapes and Community Rail guidance sheet that goes into a little bit of detail more about the challenges that the national parks and AONBs are facing, as you say, with the cars and the visitors using the cars to get around national parks. It's also got some suggestions in there around potential projects, but I mean, it could be something that, like I say, group of like-minded CRPs could come together and do something a bit more jointly. But the link for that is on our resource section under tourism, and that's the National Landscapes and Community Rail Guidance. I don't know whether you've got anything to add on that, Catherine.
Well, let's just say that accessing national parks or any AONB or whatever by car has always been an issue. I know it's been exacerbated by the pandemic, and I take Anne's point. We have seen in the peak, we've seen an increase in car parking patronage, and I mean, it's good for the national park or each local authority because they're getting more money. However, we need to get people back on rail, and I don't think there's any easy solution. As I say, the national parks have faced this sort of challenge for years and years, with declining bus, especially I'll speak for the peak. I should think Northumberland is very similar. The lakes are, the bus transport system, it's not fantastic, shall we say. They're rural areas, so frequency of buses very, very poor. We can only say that for us, especially along the Haight Valley line, is how we work. We need to work more with the National Park Authority in trying to promote train travel, and with our TOCs as well. But Anne, I'm sorry, there's no easy answer to that, is there? I think it's a long-standing issue that I think needs, each national park has management plans. Sustainable travel is key in those management plans, and it's not just the authorities who write those, it's about partnerships. So I think it probably needs addressing, probably up to a top level as well, not just an easy answer now.
Thank you. Okie doke. So that's all the questions that we had in the question and answer box. So just to open it up in case anybody had anything else that they wanted to discuss, please raise your hand now. So we'll give it a minute or so.
And can I just jump in at this point, Alice,
Yeah.
and say that we're not going to dash off at bang on 4 o'clock. We do have some flexibility. So as long as people are still asking questions, we can keep going for a few minutes afterwards, provided people do ask any questions. So yeah, we'll just on the raise hand function now.
Yes.
Oh. And we do have a question.
Yes, from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. So Sarah said, we've talked a lot about travelling by rail, but I was imagining we might also be talking about sustainability in terms of communicating to travellers how much energy their journey is saving, investment in e-buses, links with e-bikes at stations, better recycling, highlighting green tourist attractions. Yeah, so there is a bigger conversation out there about specific sustainability. Obviously we've only got so much time to talk about it today, but I would definitely have a look at the different links that is in the slideshow, and that they will be available on the website afterwards, because they talk about especially like the green tourism, there are specific companies out there and they give really good insights to like sustainable travel and what we can do there. But I think with seeing different people's suggestions around, because I know some CRPs are already working with the likes of e-bikes at stations, and it's quite a lot to do with the complexities of setting up. So for example, an e-bike, if people are, you could have a company that's where you could hire e-bikes at the station, or you could offer charging points, but then it needs somewhere secure for them to leave their e-bikes. It's not just a case of chaining it up to a bike link. So there's quite a lot of more specific things to think about around there. But yes, Sarah, if we want to have a chat offline in more detail about like your stations and what we could do around sustainable tourism around there, please feel free to get in touch with me afterwards, because like I say, each area is going to be very different in what they want to look at sustainability wise.
I think sorry, Alice.
Right.
It's around the holistic approach, isn't it, really, to tourism and the sustainability angle? Because obviously travelling by public transport and rail is the better sustainable option in terms of travel. But as Sarah says, there's other sustainable considerations around tourism, and it's about having that holistic approach, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose there's also looking at your point about highlighting green tourist attractions. There's Good Journey, who we've worked with a few times over the past, and we're still working with them, and they've got their website is basically dedicated to highlighting those tourist attractions that offer a discount or some kind of offer for visitors who travel sustainably to get to their attraction. So it could be whether they show a train ticket, a bus ticket, if they come by bike or that kind of thing. So that they're actually highlighting those and we're looking to do some closer work with them, linking through from Scenic Rail Britain line pages to the actual attraction pages on Good Journey as well, just to connect the two, because you can do a journey planner on there where it includes like the integrated transport aspect. But that's a really good website to have a look at as well. So that's Good Journey. That's a really good one for highlighting the green tourist attractions. Okay. So our Paul Webster from Commuter Rail Network has just mentioned, just to add to Catherine's point, CRPs need to work closely with local bus providers to work on joint solutions, inviting them onto the steering group. So that's a really good point of working closer together. It works with that connectivity as well. You know, some CRPs aren't as lucky that they've got their national park literally on the doorstep of their train station. So that's really good if you can get the local bus providers on board as well. Okay, so Roy has a question. So with people now working from home and only occasionally visiting their offices, how do we attract these workers? ScotRail has been promoting their flexi passes. So again, that's, I think the world has changed. I think, like you say, a lot of people are working from home. Those who previously didn't think that it was possible to work from home are working from home. So I think that's going to change the whole office environment. But I know some people are eager to get back to the office at least some point during the week. But again, it's just a case of it's highlighting and making sure you've got that information on your website that says, you know, your line's back up and open, and if ScotRail have got a promotion, then, you know, by all means use that and highlight that to your contacts in the industry there. I don't know whether Jo, you've got anything to add on that from a Wales perspective.
I know that we're working quite closely with Transport for Wales, so we know that they're not promoting tourism travel at the moment, so we know that that's under wraps. It's joint ticketing. We did have a big promotion set to go last year. They ran a very successful promotion with Cadw, where if you produced a rail ticket, I think you got free entry, or you got buy one get one free entry into castles. So that was an amazing, it was a very successful promotion, and we were going to work on that with Great Little Trains with a 20% off if you turned up with your rail ticket, the trains, and we were working through that. We were nearly about to go live. It got delayed slightly, and then it's been canned. So that it will probably all take precedence again when we get to a time when we want to start promoting rail transport again, that we will be doing money offs and you know, thinking, and joint ticketing. Research into joint ticketing is part of the remit of my project, really.
Thank you. Andy Buckley, so will you be identifying your tourism order resource to take into account the new normal? That is a very good question, Andy. So for those of you who didn't know, we have got a guidance sheet on our Community Rail Network website that is all about identifying your tourism offer, and there is an order in there about it's basically just like a sheet, and you go through and you put yourself, like you're just traveling down your line and seeing what attractions are nearby, and looking at like natural landscapes, outdoor spaces, indoor attractions, that kind of thing. So I would say yes, it should be something, as it looks like this is going to be the new normal. I think we could look at updating that in the future. So yes, thank you for that, Andy. Okay, so that's all the question and answers that we've got on there, and nobody seems to have their hand up. So I think we'll bring that to a close. Before I hand it over to Hazel, Again, I just wanted to say a big thank you to Catherine and Jo for joining us today. I think it's been a really good and interesting discussion. If anybody has got any questions or wants to talk about anything further on from these discussions that we've had today, please do get in touch with me afterwards. And I just want to say, even though you've had to cancel and postpone your tourism plans this year, you can use this time to really focus on what you can do in the future to encourage people to travel for leisure. You know, you can spend this time researching visitor trends and further understanding the sustainable tourism messages and help to integrate that into your future projects. And finally, before I hand back to Hazel, I just wanted to say thank you to Hazel and Hannah, our lovely events team, for putting all the hard work in to get this webinar set up in the background. So thank you very much, and over to you, Hazel.